In the late 70s, early 80s when I was growing up, we didn't have a game console at home. And it wasn't because my parents were anti-game console. It was just because my father saw that I had an aptitude for electronics and decided to buy me a computer. And it was Commodore VIC-20, and that was in 1982. I got my first computer. And I absolutely loved that thing. I played so many games on that thing. I wrote basic programs, typed in stuff, just had a blast on it. And then there were more computers, Apple IIs and stuff like that. And it wasn't until 1987 or so, might have been 86, where I saved up enough money to buy a Nintendo Entertainment System. And of course, I had that alongside my computers, and I would play games on both, but I really absolutely loved playing games on the Nintendo Entertainment System, one of the greatest consoles of all time. But of course, late 70s, early 80s, I had friends with game consoles, so I have some experience, just some, playing on things like Atari 2600, ColecoVision, and the subject of today's video, the Mattel Intellivision. Now, other than just playing with this thing at friends' houses, I think I had one friend with one of these occasionally. I really have very, very little experience with this console. And this one is broken, so this is going to be a repair episode. Maybe it's a simple problem and I can get it working and I have a small selection of games to try on this thing. But I also know that this thing is very strange, the architecture. It uses a bunch of custom chips that I don't have spares for. So if any of those are bad, this will be a multi-part series while I try to source the replacement chips for this thing. So please join me while I try to, discover what's wrong with this thing and then maybe discover why fans really like this console. This thing, it had a pretty big fan base back in the day, and people, at least for a number of years, really, really liked this console. Anyhow, without further ado, let's get right to it. Ah yes, you can really tell that this thing is a product of the 70s with the awesome fake wood grain and gold trim. When this thing came out, I know the Atari 2600 was out already and it had wood grain, and this was really supposed to kind of one-up the Atari 2600 with so many new features, and it did have those. Look at the controllers. There are two, and they're built in the console. They're permanently connected. These have a bunch of innovative things that maybe are or are not great for ergonomics, but we have 4 side buttons. I don't know if these are the same, like the top button is the same on either side. The joystick part of it is this disc, so you basically push up, down, left, right, but it apparently has 16 directions. Obviously, this thing has buttons that you can use with games, and what's kind of cool is it can accept these little cards. This particular game, Space Armada, I guess it's only using, clear, enter. Looks like all 4 buttons on the side are fire, and then it uses these 2 buttons for game and practice, and the rest aren't used. One thing you can notice about these controllers is the cord is very short. So I guess the idea is you would either be sitting right in front of your television, or with the game console itself, maybe it came with a very long RF cable, so then you'd have this plugged in near you. The game cartridges themselves plug into the side of the console, like so. Another nice thing about this game console is it has a built-in power supply, so you don't have to worry about losing the brick like you would on the Atari. This has an RF output, so it is a separate cable, and this one has already been composite modded. As part of the mod that's been done to this thing, we have a switch on the bottom that says channel 3 or composite. I have to imagine, I just have no experience with this, that this would have originally just been a channel selector for like 3, 4, or 2, 3 kind of thing. Nice to repurpose it to switch between the composite output and the RF. Now, one thing I'm worried about here is that this is set for channel 3. And I know that this console was working and then stopped working, and it was hooked up to a TV using composite, and somehow this got switched to RF and no one checked it. And so we'll find out if that's the case or not. Now you'll notice there's a sticker down here, hopefully that comes across in the camera, but cleaned and tested Intellivision Collector AV mod added by M. Thompson, February 2025. Well, indeed, this game console was given to me by Mark Thompson himself, who I met at the Intellivision Revolution booth at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo last year. And this console was actually being used to display some of the games. These are modern games that are made for the Intellivision, and apparently it quit working at the show. So when I told Mark that I didn't have, or I'd never worked on an Intellivision, Mark was like, hey, take this one, it's a repair, and here's some games. So I have to say a huge thank you to Mark and everyone at the Intellivision Revolution booth, a really friendly group of folks who have a real passion for this game console. and they wanted to see it get a little more coverage on the YouTubes. So that's what's about to happen, hopefully, in this video. Let's take a quick look at the games that Mark gave me with this console. One thing that really kind of makes me laugh is it says Intellivision, intelligent television. I mean, that's like literally written on the console as well. It's just odd to have intelligent television next to literally the same thing. But I guess that's their little tagline. So we have Space Armada, and it's by Mattel. The box art is very typical for like late 70s, early 80s games. You know, they never showed the way the game actually looked. It was always something that an artist had created, and almost like something you'd see on the cover of a book or something like that. We open this up. Oh, look, I do have another insert for Space Armada. Don't know if that's the way the game is going to look, but this is obviously a Space Invader clone, as was required for every console to have something like that. Looks like they've, you know, tried to mix it up a little bit. Still has a spaceship that kind of flies across the top, but is that a ninja star happening there? You know, we'll see if if I can get this console working. So I guess at the time that this game was released, these were other Mattel games you could get. Las Vegas Roulette, Electronic Company Math Fun. Oh, I mean, that's a popular one. I mean, everyone loves that. There's that Intellivision, intelligent television again. It's funny. It's like a tongue twister. Try to say that quickly. Intellivision, I can't even do it. Other electronic games available from Mattel Electronics. Look for them. Okay, next up, Major League Baseball. I kind of recall that this game could talk. Also, oh, a lot more fun and a whole lot more. Okay. So I don't know if Mattel had to publish all the games or, you know, like Nintendo style, or there were third-party things. But when I mentioned that I thought this game talked, I think there was like a speech module that goes into the side of this. I remember this at my friend's house. They had it, and it would be like, you know, you're out, and it would say stuff like that. But maybe I'm confusing it with a different game console. So we have tennis, we have backgammon. So exciting. Las Vegas poker and blackjack. NBA basketball. NASL soccer? I don't know that league. It's called Major League Soccer in the US now, MLS. PGA golf. I really wonder how these games are. US ski team skiing. NHL hockey. NFL football. They were really in the sports games, weren't they? Space battle. That looks like an asteroids clone if I've ever seen it. Checkers. Like, why even make this? Who's gonna play checkers on their game console? Like, no one. The Electric Company Math Fun. Okay, that's cool. Ooh, auto racing, so a top-down view. That's kind of cool. We have a boxing game. Sea battle. I'm assuming this is like Battleship-ish or something. Horse racing, another exciting game. Las Vegas Roulette. Armor battle. Space Armada. I really do like this painting here. That's kind of cool. PBA bowling. Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, I think I actually have that cartridge. Snafu. Is this like a snake game with up to 4 players? Or 2 players? Triple Action. And Electric Company Word Fun. And become an Intellivision insider. Yeah, everyone had to have a magazine. Ah, look, we got Triple Action here. That was listed in that catalog. There it is, 2 overlays. Looks like it's a tank game, like Atari tank kind of simulator. Top-down racing game and sort of like an airplane action game. Then we have a game called Locomotion that doesn't have the kind of flip cover like the other ones have. So I don't know if this is made by a third-party company. It still says Mattel on the back here. 1982 though. This is like that game, what was it called? I had it on the Macintosh, and the pipe would fill up with water, and you had to kind of rotate the pieces around to make sure you get the water flow over to the other side. It's just this uses a train instead. The last box game is Night Stalker. Don't know if that's like a Berserk style game. That is the flip cover. I don't know. What is this a clone of, would you say? The robots are firing shots at the man, and the spider and bats block his escape. They're all after him. Shoot and run for cover. How long can you survive? And then going through my box of cartridges, I actually found a couple more. So we have Donkey Kong by Nintendo. Now what's confusing is it says Coleco Industries on the bottom, as in like the ColecoVision, but it says game cartridge for use with Intellivision Master Component and Sears Super Video Arcade, which I'm assuming is a Sears OEM clone of the Intellivision. I wouldn't call it a clone. I'm sure it was licensed, but they just sold it under their own branding. And then I also have Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And I do have a very messed up overlay for advanced D&D. And looks like it's got very crumpled up. I don't know if this is actually going to work in the controller. Now, of all these games, I bet you it was Donkey Kong that was like the most popular of all of them. What's so funny about this is, Coleco was selling their own game console at the time. Nintendo wasn't, not in this time. They had maybe the Game & Watch, but it wasn't until the NES came out that, they probably stopped licensing their games for other consoles like this. How much effort did they put into this? Is this actually a good port? I guess we'll find out if I can make this thing actually work. Now, I'd mentioned that I thought the Intellivision was a strange machine, and it is. And we'll get into that in just a second. But it did bring with it quite a number of firsts that really carried forward and set the stage for game consoles and game systems to come. This thing, released in 1979, was the very first game console that I'm aware of that used tile maps. This is different than a system that uses a frame buffer for its graphics or racing the beam like the Atari 2600 that doesn't even have a frame buffer at all. Yeah, this thing just used normal 8x8 tile maps. And if you've ever done any kind of programming or looked into how games work on the Sega Master System, the Nintendo Entertainment System, or pretty much any console after that that had 2D capabilities, Super NES, Genesis, everything you saw on the screen of those consoles was tile-based. And that allowed for things like smooth scrolling, because as you scroll the viewport, you redraw the tiles off the edge of the viewport where you can't see it, and then those will scroll into view, and you're not having to update the pixels on the entire frame buffer, which takes a lot of CPU time. It actually just is able to hardware scroll the entire viewport. Now, the Intellivision doesn't have hardware scrolling as far as I'm aware, but it does have that tile map. It has sprites. It has all the stuff that a modern game console would have. It's just got some serious limitations, like its very strange architecture, and I think it's like a 0.8 megahertz clock speed, so it's seriously underpowered when it comes to that. Now, I'm aware we haven't even turned this thing on. Maybe it actually works. Hopefully that's not the case. But let's take a look at the service manual, because in here, there is a little section on how the system actually works architecturally, and let's just start right there. Here we go, system description and operation. So this system is called the master component. The master component system is based on two processors. One is a 16-bit microprocessor. Yes, this is actually a 16-bit system. And the CPU, of course, computes the game action against stored program rules, so it executes code. The second is the standard television interface circuit, the stick, which interprets condensed memory area and uses that to generate a color video signal. And that's the tile map that it's talking about. The audio is accomplished by using a programmable sound generator, a PSG IC that I think the sound generator is an AY chip, which is very similar to the one that was used on lots of other arcade and home computers. For instance, I think the later ZX Spectrum used a very similar chip, or the same chip that this thing used. Inside the master component is a power supply board. This is a PCB that consists of two regular heatsink assemblies, necessary related components. It takes AC voltage and regulates that to DC. And if I recall, this thing uses, I think, 3 voltages, including something like -3 volts or +3 volts, something slightly unusual. Now here's where things get weird. The system is based on two processors which timeshare a 14-bit directional bus. The central processing unit is a CP1610, which algorithmically computes the game action. Yeah, that's a funny way to say it. It's basically running code that's stored in the ROM cartridge, and the standard television adapter, the stick, which is an AY3-8900-1, interprets a condensed memory area and uses the information to generate the television raster display. The stick also fetches moving and background picture information from the graphics memory, which presents data as video output. The CPU is a complete 16-bit single-chip high-speed metal oxide semiconductor large-scale integrated circuit, MOS LSI. It has a 16-bit bidirectional bus to transfer data, addresses, and instructions between the microprocessor memory and peripheral devices. The timing and synchronization signals are applied to the CPU by the stick. So it's the stick or the graphics chip that generates all the timing for the CPU, which is not unlike the Commodore 64. It says here that the stick can generate 8 sprites or foreground objects. And there's also a background mode, which uses a dedicated area of memory to store character control codes for display positions. I think this basically means the tiles can be mapped anywhere on the grid. The resolution is relatively low. I think it's like 159 across by 96 down, something like that. The graphics memory consists of a graphics read-only ROM, which I'm pretty sure is a character set that's built into the console, so games don't have to store that in the ROM cartridge. And here's a block diagram, and unfortunately the scan is relatively low quality, but this is the only copy of the full service manual that I'm aware of, and at least it's readable. So cartridge ROM is over here on the left. Built into the system, we have scratchpad RAM, which is pretty small if I recall. Like I think you end up with like 300 bytes or something like that available to programs that are running, because a lot of it's used up by the BIOS equivalent, which is stored in the program ROM. It appears that the sound generator is responsible for all the controller inputs. There's also a system ROM, which has a different part number. It looks like this is an 02 and that's an 04. I'm not sure the exact difference between those two. There's our CPU sort of orchestrating it all. The system RAM, which is different than the scratchpad RAM, I suppose. What's not super clear to me is why there's like a separate path that goes between the CPU, system ROM, system RAM, and the stick, as opposed to this thick path that kind of connects all the things together. It probably is explained if we just keep reading down a little further. Over here with the stick, it's connected to the graphics ROM, and there's the graphics RAM. So there is 2 or potentially 3 sets of RAM: scratchpad RAM, system RAM, and graphics RAM. Graphics ROM, system ROM, program ROM. All of these are custom parts, except for I think the graphics RAM, which is just the 214s. Therefore, if any of these chips are bad, pretty much there's no chance of me fixing them. And from my reading, the only way to obtain these chips is pulls from other consoles. Now it looks like there is actually a chip that wasn't shown on the block diagram, the AY3-8915, which is the color oscillator master clock generator. So it looks like a 7.159 megahertz oscillator feeds into this chip, which then generates probably signals that go into the stick. It said earlier in this document that it was the stick that actually generates the CPU clock, although it doesn't really say that in this little section here. The system RAM receives data from the CPU via 16-bit bidirectional time multiplex bus, and the direction of the data travel is always from the CPU to the graphics memory, except during a bus reversal condition. This condition is indicated when the CPU requests a read from the graphics address on a 14-bit graphics bus. A 3-bit control bus from the CPU provides strobe signals to the system RAM in the on-chip address latch and memory area. The program ROM, aka the executive ROM, it contains system operating data. System program data from the executive ROM is transmitted along a 16-bit bidirectional bus. The program ROM contains program data common to all external programs. Data from the program ROM is transmitted along the 16-bit bidirectional bus. A scratchpad RAM associated with the program ROM is provided for computation of program ROM data. Intra-connection of the program ROM and the scratchpad memory is accomplished through a 14-bit bidirectional data bus. Okay, and then it goes on to talking about diagnostic and troubleshooting. It appears that there is a special cartridge, the MTE-201 test cartridge. And finally, here's a layout of the board. Check for positive 12-volt DC, test point 3. Check for 18-volt DC, unloaded on TP4, non-regulated. And then early production units below 113899 will have minus 3.3 volts. This is serial number 1238863. So this is definitely not an early production unit because it has an extra digit. Oh, excellent. We actually have full schematics. So program ROM, there it is, data bit 0 through data bit 15. Is that our CPU? Yep, that is data bit 0 through data bit 15. It is multiplex, meaning the address lines and the data lines use the same pins because it's a 40-pin DIP package. It's very much just like the 8086. Same thing was happening there. That actually presents issues because compared to, say, a 6502, which is non-multiplex, this processor running at 1 megahertz is going to be way slower than a 6502 at the same clock speed, just because it's going to be wasting a whole bunch of extra time swapping those pins between addressing and data lines. So right there, that kind of cuts the effective performance at least in half. And this thing only runs at 800 hertz. So we're talking like 400 hertz equivalent if you're talking about compared to a 6502. And it might be even worse depending on how efficient this thing is at running instructions inside of it. There's our system RAM, which is dual ported. So one side of it has the 14 bits, 0 through 13, and the other side has 0 through 16 to talk to the CPU. Notice there's no address lines on here. That's because this hardware is specifically designed to work with the CPU, I guess, and it doesn't need the addressing. It probably has these extra control signals that say, hey, this is an address line, latch that, and then here's the data line. It appears that the cartridge works the same way, so my assumption is the chips that are in the cartridge are probably specifically designed to work with this system as well, or there's additional logic in there with latches and things like that to interface to this different style CPU bus. Now here's our system ROM. Interesting is this does have address lines, but it also, it has the same data lines all the way up to 15. but address lines 0 through 5. What are those coming from? Oh, maybe this is somehow going to the scratch pad RAM. Okay, so it's like the ROM chip is driving the scratch pad RAM? I remember on the block diagram, the scratch pad RAM was hanging off the ROM. Well, I guess it literally is. Oh, yeah, look, there's the read-write line and 2 additional address lines. So really, it's the ROM that drives the scratch pad RAM. That is so strange. Oh, there's more address lines over here. I didn't even see these. Here's our sound chip, 8-bit data bus, but no address lines. Notice that. I mean, there are A and B lines here, but this is for the controllers. So this obviously supports the multiplexed address bus directly as well. Okay, so looking at our dual-ported system RAM again, we follow this over here. Here's our lower and upper graphics RAM. Now, I thought these were 214s. Clearly not, because these are 8 bits each. But these look potentially more conventional in that they just have address lines, like they're just SRAM chips. So potentially those are more normal. Here's our graphics ROM with that 14-bit data bus. There are 2 additional lines that are just tied to ground. But 0 through 13 for everything else. We do have address lines, but again, these don't go to the CPU. These are for driving the RAM chips. So it's like these ROM chips have the capability to have RAM hanging off of them. So we saw the scratch RAM that hangs off the system ROM, I think, and then the graphics ROM has the graphics RAM that hangs off of it. It's so strange, all of this stuff, really. All right, this chip here, U10, seems to be what takes... Well, there's the stick. This must be video signal stuff that comes out of it, however that's formatted. And then out comes color luminance. Oh, yeah, I got S-video, horizontal vertical sync. And then that is combined with a resistor ladder, and that's the video signal. So that's where the composite mod on this thing must attach. But there is our crystal as well. So U10, besides taking the video signal and outputting that, it also is handling clock stuff. So here's a clock output. These are things we're going to have to check. That's why I'm looking at this, is I need to kind of understand like where to start looking and checking and looking at the pinout of these chips. But there is our clock signal, which goes to the stick. Oh, it goes to other things as well. Looks like it goes to the cartridge port. I'm looking for reset on the CPU, and I don't even see it. Phi 1 and Phi 2, so these are clock inputs. Where does this clock line come from? Oh, right here, stick. Okay, so that is the clock output. Phi 1 and Phi 2 come out of stick, goes up to the CPU, and it probably goes over to somewhere down here. Yes, goes to the sound chip. Okay. Does the CPU not have a reset circuit? Does it not need a reset input? Is it somehow self-resetting? I don't know if I've ever seen a system that has no reset circuit. I mean, there's a reset button on here. Oh, let's just look at where the reset button is. Goes down here. There is our reset button. So this goes into the stick. I wonder if it resets the CPU by just halting the clock, maybe? Now, one oddity I didn't really talk about this of the CPU is that it's a 16-bit CPU, but it actually uses 10-bit instructions. Now, that in and of itself is not that unusual, but from what I was reading, to save space in the ROMs, like the ROMs that are in the system here, it's actually packing the 10-bit instructions into the ROMs without a bunch of blank bits in between each one, because it's a 16-bit processor, right? So you'd have those extra bits that aren't used. It's a waste of space, so die space. So apparently, all the instructions are packed together, and as it executes, it does multiple reads from the ROM, like 8 bits at a time, and it's able to kind of unpack these 10-bit instructions. You have to think about 1979 die space, especially for something that's inexpensive consumer device like this, was at a commodity. Like you wouldn't want to just waste a bunch of die space on a bunch of 6 bits for every single instruction. It just makes the whole system that much slower because it's not only having to multiplex the address and data bus together, but it's having to do multiple reads from ROM to unpack those 10-bit instructions into 16 bits. The whole thing is just very strange, and that's just what is unusual to me. Quickly looking through the rest of this thing, there's our power supply board. We'll have to investigate that first, obviously, and we have some waveforms to look at. And there's still a whole lot more about how this works. Oh, technical information on each of the chips. Okay, well, we won't look at that yet. I think we need to get into troubleshooting just to see what's actually wrong with this thing, if anything, and then kind of go from there. I apologize that this was probably one of the longest introductions that I think I've ever done on any system, but it's because I really don't know anything about how this thing works. And as you can see with what I just went over, it's an unusual system. It's quite unusual. Okay, I have the composite video output hooked up to the RetroTink. It's plugged into power. I've turned on the power strip, and here we go. Well, nothing. Okay. All right. Well, remember that toggle switch on the bottom, which was set to channel 3. That was the way that I got this console. Let's flip this over to RCA. Okay, here we go. Let's see if this does anything. Okay, we do have a video signal, and it's black. Okay. Let's check our status screen. So 15.7 kilohertz, 59.92 hertz. So our video signal appears to be NTSC compatible. We don't know about the color burst, but everything looks fine, at least from the frequencies. Now, if we push the reset button, I don't even know if this thing's supposed to do anything without a cartridge plugged in. Some consoles, like the ColecoVision, do present a splash screen, but then many consoles without a game cartridge plugged in don't do anything. All right, let's try a couple of these. So we'll start with our Donkey Kong cartridge. I have no idea if these actually work or not. Let's see what this does. All right, we're still getting a black screen. Pressing the reset button does actually make the clock go away because the video signal disappears. Interesting. Okay, I put in the advanced D&D cartridge. Yep, same thing. So that video, that gray screen we're seeing, that's not from the console, that's just the retro tank. And just in case those cartridges are bad, I've gone ahead and grabbed Night Stalker. Yep, same thing. All right, well, let's get this thing open and start probing around. I'm gonna start with those voltage rails. Immediately, the motherboard, it looks like it's upside down under some shielding. We have the transformer. This is the AC to DC converter. One of these cables, which are absolutely horrendous. These always corrode. So easiest thing for me to probe or start probing is the power supply. Looks like the ribbon cable, those hateful ribbon cables, 5, minus 2.1, 16 volt unregulated, plus 12 and ground. And then P5, which is this thing right here. What does that go to? We know we're getting voltage, right? Like it's coming on with the right oscillator and stuff like that. So I think the majority of this stuff is working fine, but we do need to check that these other rails are available because 5 volts is probably all that you need to get a video signal, but you need these other ones for everything else to work properly. Why isn't P5 labeled what that is exactly? It's obviously an output of some kind. We got 5.852 on that P5 connector. All right, let's check out this ribbon cable. First part should be ground. Okay, so we have the minus 2.162 working. That's excellent. Pin 4 is ground. Let's just go in order. Pin 1, it's over here. It's 5 volts. Yep, that's solid. 12.16 volts, that is solid. That was pin 2. 16 volts unregulated. Don't think that's probably necessary for anything. It's at 19 volts, that's fine. So everything looks good on the power supply. It's outputting the correct voltages. Now, it doesn't mean necessarily that the motherboard is getting those because these ribbon cables suck and it could be, disconnected on the other side. So I need to keep taking this thing apart. Our controllers are connected here and here, which is interesting. That, I don't know, I wonder if the design of this motherboard was done before they figured out how this case was going to work. Okay, flipping it over, we get our first look at the system. Just be careful with this ribbon cable. So neat design here. Let's just unplug this so I can remove this, but that's the composite video mod. Yeah, it picks up the audio, the video, and a power signal, and then there's a ground right there. I still don't fully get what this 5.8 volts or whatever is that goes down to the main board there. We're gonna have to go investigate that. Let's just look around. This looks really hot, like the board is overheated in that spot. That's a red flag right there. This transistor, maybe it's bad. I should just immediately check that because that's a bad sign when you see that kind of thing. The one thing I need to keep in mind if I test this out of the case like this is that the cartridge goes in this way because the board is normally flipped upside down. So just to kind of eliminate that as a possibility of me plugging it in correctly, I'm just going to plug the cartridge in right now. Date codes on the chips, 82, 82, 81 on that one. Okay, yeah, so we can tell this thing is from kind of early 1982, this board. Now we do have things in sockets. I don't know if these white ones are probably the originals, but well, probably they're all the originals. I can't imagine anyone would have changed it. These chips here, they're in sockets. Seems like everything's in a socket except for these. These are obviously RAM chips, GTE 3539s, yep, so graphics RAM, and this was the scratch pad RAM. Here's our crystal, 7.1 megahertz. There's our little trimmer, and everything looks really, really nice and in good shape on this board. Very much so. Now this little cable, if you want to replace it, it's not that hard. You could just use wires. But connections on the board look fine. Let's just immediately start checking to make sure we have continuity. We have good continuity on all those wires, so that's not a problem. Let's go and let's look at this burned area over here. It really seems like it's that transistor. That's our problem specifically. I just looked, this is a 2N3906, so it's pretty standard part PMP transistor. So easy to replace if that is indeed the problem. But we need to look at the schematic to see how this is wired into this circuit. And ideally, I need to get this RF shield off because I can't see the backside. Oh, look, 1980 Mattel. I need to get the shield off. It is connected all the way around. It looks like Mark has already partially removed this. Actually, it might already be not connected. Let's try to get this off. There's the shield removed. Let's look at what bodge has been done under here. So these have been done to repurpose that switch to switch between RF and composite video. This is the area here that looks like it was burned. Something was replaced there, which is this part right here. When we take a look at the value of this, it is 68 ohms. And you can see there, it looks like it is blue or purple, gray, black, gold. That matches right there, 68 ohms. So the value is correct, at least, well, I don't know if it's the right value that should be on the board, but at least it's not open or damaged or whatever. Now this little hot section of the board is definitely this circuit. Now this is the clock signal. It's coming from the stick because it goes into phi 1 and phi 2, but we have plus 16 volts that goes in here, but I don't even know what this is doing. Like, why is it hooked up to the clock lines on the CPU as well? I think there's our 68 ohm resistor there, and 100 ohm is right below it. And then there's a diode, which is probably the Zener right here, 3.3 volts. And it does say see figure 4. If you look at the phi 1 and phi 2, oh, 12 volts peak to peak. I get it. Both waveforms are shown pins 37 and 38, so they have two traces at once. 180-degree phase relationship. I don't know what U11 is. Probably an open collector driver. So I bet what this is doing is generating something like a 12-volt power supply. And then these are open collectors, which means that all they do is drive to ground. So it sits there at 12 volts, and then when it needs to drive it to ground, these are powerful and can do that. And it just has to fight against this 100 ohm and a 68 ohm resistor. So I guess that whole circuit just gets really hot. Oh, and by the way, there's that extra connector, the one on the power supply that I didn't know what it was, this blue wire right here. And this is that 5.6 volts that goes to the stick. So it runs on 5.6 volts there, which it was right. We saw 5.8 or something like that. It's close enough. It runs on the minus 2.1, which we definitely saw. I don't know if it's on the right pin on the stick itself, but at least it's coming out of the power supply. And then we have ground. So those are the voltages that chip runs off of. There's the minus 2.1 on the system RAM, plus 5 volts. So yeah, my assumption is that this chip is only driven by 5.6 volts and minus 2.1. It can't generate the 12 volt clocks that I guess the CPU needs. So I think that's what this extra circuit is for. And I don't know if it's working. So we're going to need to start probing around this thing. I think I have an idea of like what I need to start looking at, finally. Now, one thing I noticed, it's not marked on this board. None of the component numbers are marked, like U, whatever, for the ICs. So I had to figure out which chip is what just based on the way they were connected to the associated components. There's also not a map in that service manual I was looking at. There's a picture in the service manual of all the ICs, and it's freaking unlabeled. Either way, I wrote on the board what all the various components are. So we have CPU, we have the dual ported RAM, there's the stick chip, there's the sound chip, the color chip is right here. That's the one that generates those extra clocks or the video signal itself. We have 3 of the small RAM chips, and then we have 2 different ROM chips along with a smaller ROM chip. And I did also mark, just for my convenience, what pin 1 is. So for the CPU, for instance, there's pin 1, there's pin 20, pin 40 is up here. I went ahead, I also soldered on a ground lead, so that's what the scope is connected to. And let's start probing around. Let's start with the stick IC, U4, VCC pin 20. This will be that 5 volt rail. So we turn on the system. 5.8 volts. I'm sure that is close enough. And then this pin 40, this should be the minus 2.1 volts. Yep. If you take a look down here, it says max channel 2.08 volts. So that's good. That's getting to the stick. The system will not work without that. Okay, let's take a look at the clock signal, which is this. I'm on pin 10. That's phi 1, 1.79 megahertz. Is that correct? I thought the system ran at like 0.8 megahertz. This is the adjacent pin, pin 11, same clock frequency, so that looks good. I mean, the waveform looks perfect. Now, I can be pretty sure that I don't need to look at this reset circuit, and that's very specifically because when I push that button, it does reset the system, meaning the video signal drops off, so we know that that's working. And we really don't need to worry about the whole clock on the color chip because we're getting a good video signal, and that just would not be possible if it weren't for that clock. That's not to say there's not a problem with the clock output going to other chips, but at least this chip is clocked properly because it generates the horizontal and vertical sync. Now this signal right here, pin 15, this is the output of the clock signal and it looks perfect, 7.15 megahertz, no issues. You can ignore the fact that this is jittering around. That is my oscilloscope here. It just does not do a good job measuring frequencies. That clock signal makes its way into the stick, pin 15, and also goes over to the cartridge slot. Now let's take a look at the clock signal that's coming into the CPU with all these hot components. I can see it looks like it's, I think it's 37 and 38. So here is 38. Oh, that looks bad. I don't know, that can't be right. And there's the other one. Okay, so just like I thought, it is 12 volts peak to peak. Now this is 37. I think this is our problem right here. I mean, this is going to be a problem. 37 looks perfect, but 38, which is where we saw all that burn stuff on the board, does not look right. Okay, our problem here is on pin 38. That's where our issue is. Now I have this hooked up. Okay, so I'm probing around with the diode test on both of these. I don't really see an issue. All looks pretty similar, like the readings I'm getting on both. And remember, specifically our issue is this transistor. Now I wonder if we have like an issue with this diode, CR4. I mean, I don't know. I just don't see what could cause the weird behavior other than the transistor itself has gone bad. The base drive is the same, shared between the two of them. And the top one, Q2, is working fine. So I think this stuff here with the Zener, the resistor, and the cap is fine because it's driving this base no problem. Like I said before when I was talking about the circuit, the way it works is this is an open collector driver, almost certainly. I didn't look up the part, but it's got to be. So what happens is this will be 12 volts or 11 point whatever-ish when the transistor is turned on, which basically is all the time. And what happens is the open collector driver should bring down the 12 volts down to ground whenever the clock signal that's going into it, should be down around ground. Otherwise, it lets it go back up to 12 volts or 11 point whatever. But what we're seeing is it is down around ground, so I think U11 is working. But then the issue is when it releases it, it doesn't go back up to 12 volts. Now, I suppose we could have a problem on the CPU. Maybe I need to just take it out and take a look at what the clocks look like at that point. Because what if there's something wrong with the clock input on the CPU? That is possible. Or there's a problem with the transistor, and it is going to be Q1, right? Because it's 38 that our problem is. Or maybe this 100 ohm resistor or the inductor that's right there or something around there. Now, I'm pretty sure it's this resistor that looks like it's been resoldered. That's the 100 ohm resistor, or sorry, 68 ohm. Okay, that was the one that's fine. Oh yes, this is the 100 ohm, or should be the 100 ohm right here. And yeah, see, it is 99 ohms, so that's perfect. Those are these two parts. Now, what about this inductor right here? I don't think that part is actually installed on this board. I think the schematics are incorrect because I can pretty much tell the base is this middle pin because it's connected to the other transistor, and we can see that the two bases here are connected together. This pin of Q1 is connected to the 100 ohm resistor, and if we take a look, that's this resistor right here, so that's the 100 ohm. Yep, there it is. And then the other pin on the schematic goes through this inductor, and then it goes to pin 38 on the CPU. Well, that's not the case on this board. This actually just goes directly here to pin 38. You can see the resistance is like 0.5 ohms. And then one thing is both of the clock inputs go through these two diodes, and then it goes through CR5 as Zener. This is almost certainly the 12 volt Zener diode, which is what's clamping this all to about 12 volts. And we know it's working because the other clock line, 37, is fine. This one, with that diode is working. So I know we're looking at the back side of the board, but we should be able to see those two diodes. So there's the one diode CR3 on pin 37. And then this one should be the one on pin 38. Yep, that looks good. And then the Zener diode that's right here that's connected to ground, I can see that is right here. I can't remember which way I have to have the probes. It's like this. There it is, 0.67. It's not shorted or anything like that. You can't really test a Zener diode without putting higher voltage into it. But this goes off to ground, and it is correctly connected to the ground over here. Yep. But we already know that that's actually fine because, like I said, 37 works, it's 38 that's the problem. So there's just not much that could be wrong here other than U11, pin 38 on the CPU, or, well, I don't think the resistor is the problem. I mean, it looks completely fine. It's the transistor. I'm going to take that transistor out, and I guess we'll test it out a circuit and maybe swap it out. Now, normally I do a little bit more testing by like lifting the CPU clock input pin on 38, but I don't want to touch the CPU right now. It's got that heatsink on top of it, but also if it's bad, then we're pretty much up a creek with this. So I'm going to explore my other options first, things that I can fix before I have to try to source a replacement CPU. Here's our little part, National Semiconductor 2N3906 PNP transistor. And the little ferrite bead, I'll just reproduce that. It's on that leg. So here's replacement 3906. Before we put that in the board, let's just test this one, see if this one looks okay. You know, one of the issues with this, it just seems like a pretty high stress part. I mean, judging by, oh yeah. Just make sure it has good contact though. Maybe I didn't have it in all the way. Diode? Okay. It's a pretty high stress part just because it has a 100 ohm resistor there that the whole clock circuit is like sinking it through, and that just doesn't seem the best design. All right, the part is back in. First, I'm going to check the waveform on pin 37 just so we can see how that looks. There it is. And now pin 38. There we go. That was it. That transistor had failed. So 37 and 38, they both look good. All right, so let's see if we get any kind of video signal. First, I got to plug this little connector in for our composite mod. Okay, black screen. No cartridges installed though, so that might be completely normal. Noticing like a big blob right here on the cartridge connector. That must have been from the RF shield or something. There it is. Mattel Electronics presents Night Stalker. The system freaking works. I mean, at least the game comes up. And here's the reset button. Boop. Yep, works a lot better when doesn't work super well even when I push it with my finger. I have to kind of push it hard. Come on. There we go. Now I'm kind of curious. I want to know, do these other cartridges that are untested, Donkey Kong and Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, do these actually work? So D&D. You know, what's funny is I would think almost the background should be black on this test screen, you know, this startup screen, but then I guess not because there is a black square in the top corner. So maybe this is normal. Let's try the Donkey Kong cartridge. Hey, that works as well. And you know what's so funny? No Mattel on here. Is this like an unauthorized cartridge? Is this one of the ones that they were trying to stop when it came to, I think the later version of the Intellivision, sort of a beige color, had some copy protection stuff in it. And I wonder if it included, you know, stopping this cartridge from working. I know I haven't actually started a game, and one of the reasons is the controllers are both unplugged, but I am relieved that none of these custom chips are actually faulty on this, and literally it's like a jelly bean part. That's like a 2-cent part that failed and took this console out. Okay, I cleaned up that blob that was on there, and I've hooked up the audio output so we'll be able to hear if there's any sound. And I also connected up the controllers. So I should not count my chickens before they have hatched. Let's see if this thing does actually work. Maybe if I hold the controller the right way. Enter players 1 or 2. Level 1. This is Donkey Kong, by the way. Video looks better now that the RetroTink has had a second to stabilize. Oh. This doesn't seem great. How do you jump? Probably at one of the buttons? Nope. I don't know how to jump. So you don't jump by pushing. Oh, I see. Okay, it was one of the side buttons. Not sure these Buttons are working super well. You really have to push them hard. Oh, this is not a good version of this game at all. Wow, okay. The jump, like, trajectory is just weird. Also, what's the game? There aren't as many levels as there normally are? I don't know. Okay, well, at least, I don't know if this has all the levels or what the deal is. The graphics are, shall we say, kind of poor. The audio, wait, what? There are 2 levels? No way. I think people watching will be able to tell me, is this the worst version of Donkey Kong that exists on any home console? Because I'm thinking that it is. Ugh. Yeah. Okay, let's check out Night Stalker. Am I in the jail? Yes, I am. If that's a jail, I don't know. I have to watch out for the bats, obviously. I need this. All right, well, it is working. So one of my questions is one controller better than the other? Because controller 1 is this one. Maybe I need to swap these around inside the case. They definitely seem like the same controller. So let's do that just to see if one works better, because that fire button on that one is not good. Okay, now this controller is now controller 1. I put Donkey Kong back in because I know how to actually jump on that one. So enter, 1, 1, enter. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, the buttons work so much better on this one. So the other controllers just was super worn out. Oh yeah, okay. Oh yeah, jumping is normal. Oh, all the buttons jump on this, all 4. Okay, well that's great. So I think that means I need to put this thing back together, but I'm going to swap the controllers around so that this will be controller 1 and put this thing all back together. Okay, the Intellivision is all back together. I have it hooked up to a monitor, composite the way it's supposed to be. I have Night Stalker installed in the console, plus I have the overlay. I couldn't shoot before because I didn't realize you have to push the buttons on the numeric keypad to actually shoot the different directions. You use the disc for moving. Okay, so let's see if I can get a single shot in here. So I'll pick this up. So yeah, if I push like down, it actually shoots. Here we go. Whoops, yeah, I walked right into that. How long will I survive? Apparently not very long. Oh, he's stuck in a spider web. Oh, well, I got them, but I also got hit myself. All right. Come on, shoot. No. I swear I was pushing the button, but it wasn't working. All right, well, that's Night Stalker. Not bad, not bad at all. I have to say that compared to Donkey Kong, that is way less disappointing, because there's actually some fun to be had with this game. Not that Donkey Kong can't have any fun, it's just that it's pretty lame at the same time. I swear the Atari 2600 version is better. Okay, so next up, let's try Locomotion. Oh, it also has a little overlay. This has a $2.99 Goodwill price tag on it. Gotta say that it can be kind of hard to get these overlays in, because what's happened is they've gotten a little chewed up on the bottom here and they don't slide in properly. Okay, I've tried like trimming off a little bit of it because it kept getting caught because it was torn a little bit, plus the bottom was mangled. Oh yeah, there we go. So now it goes in, and it actually has a little slot here so it doesn't slide up when you're pushing on it. All right, this has music. Working on the railroad, everyone. 1 or 2 players. Okay, well, whoops. Let's try that again. Okay, the green one's the only one I can move? Yes, got it. Okay, so like I see this is a problem right here. Actually, I don't know. Oh, I see. It's gonna loop around here and then it's going to be a bit of a problem when it gets to this spot. And that's what this is telling us, that this yellow thing is telling us where it's going to be. So it looks like when I need to get it into here, I need to move these pieces down and that over. And actually there's an accelerate button, so I could have pushed that to speed it up. Here we go. Like that, like that. Uh-oh. There we go. Now I'm gonna try accelerate. Oh yeah, that works. And then I move that piece over. So accelerate. Oh, what's this bad guy here? It's like a car. I think it's a car, maybe? There we go. This game's kind of fun, I gotta say. There's probably a lot more to it that I just don't understand. So is it gonna hit this? Switch this guy, like have him crash off or something. And that'll get rid of him. Nope. Shoot. Well, that's bad. Yeah, that game's pretty fun, I gotta say. Not bad at all. If you crash into a crazy train, the loose caboose will cost you a train. Watch out. Also, there are loop sweepers, crazy tracks, the panic button. If you panic at the right time, it can help. Pressing the panic button causes the track the train is on, along with your train, to be interchanged with some other track on the screen. Oh, I could have pushed that when I was about to crash into the loose caboose, so it was called. Okay, next up, Triple Action, where it's definitely a clone of the Atari Tank game. The overlay, we do have accelerate or fire and start brake, so it does use two of the buttons on the side. I thought I was reading somewhere that you can't push both buttons simultaneously. We got a black screen. I'm going to wiggle the cartridge. There we go. All right, so racing cars, biplanes, and battle tanks. Let's do battle tanks. Okay, I assume this is a two-player game. Yep, so there's my tank. I can, and the other one. Yep, can't really play this because it is a two-player game. Reset button does not work very well anymore. Racing cars. Oh, also a two-player game. All right, so you can brake, you can accelerate. Obviously, you're supposed to play against a second player. This is lame. I gotta say, this game, not impressive. I guess it was good to have 3-in-1 games, but all three of these aren't super fun. I'd say Tank is better than this. Like, this is dumb. You can actually drive off the road. Now, I'd love to hear from people who maybe had this game when you had your Intellivision. Was this the only game you had? And were you upset about that? Or did you still have tons and tons of fun with it? And I guess we'll try biplanes, but I assume it'll be similarly lame. Okay, I see. So we're supposed to hit the balloon, I take it. Let me try hitting the other player. Ah, I missed. Oh, it just wrapped around. That's funny. I don't really have the patience to try to figure that out any further. I'd say of Triple Action, the best game is going to be the tank game to play against your friends, because I played that on the Atari 2600, and yeah, you know, it's not terrible. It's fun after a while. I'm going to leave the baseball game to the very end because I do not like baseball games, especially not on old consoles like this. Let's try Space Armada, the clone of Space Invaders. Do I even need this? No, I do not. Okay, come on. Okay, this one is not working. Got a purple screen. Jiggle this around. We might need some deoxit in the socket. Oh, I see a ton of corrosion in there. Well, that's not good. All right, so let's clean this with a cotton swab. I may have to take this cartridge apart. It's green and crusty. And I'm annoyed, actually. I should have paid attention. I just kind of assumed these were working because I put this in the cartridge slot now with a bunch of that green crap in it. And I'm putting some deoxit. It's probably going to be fine. Let's just put it in and out of the cartridge slot a few times. Nope. Yeah, I have a feeling there's just like bad corroded traces on there. And I don't know how it could get so corroded. I mean, it's not like there's a battery in here or anything like that. I'm just gonna pop in another working game cartridge. Okay, yeah, so it's not like the console's broken or anything. Yeah, this is AD&D. I don't really know how to play this. I think if we like, and now we're in this kind of like maze thing, and hey, it does have scrolling. Scrolling's not too bad, you know, all things considered. Just trying to see if any button does anything. I would say negative. Oh, I thought it was gonna hurt me. Oh, two birds, or bats, whatever they are. Space Armada has a couple screws on the back. Let's see how easy it is to open these up, because maybe I can just polish those contacts. I would like to see this game work. Okay, cover comes off. Whoa. What the heck? This is in terrible, terrible shape. Well, there's your problem. I mean, what happened? This is a disaster. Those traces are just completely gone. Absolutely gone. Yeah, there's no way this is gonna come good, not without some serious reconstruction, and that won't be for this video. Let me try to polish these up real quick just to see if somehow this can come back to life, but no, I don't see any way this will come back to life. All right, well, I managed to make it look better. You can see that these ones, which are completely tarnished before, are now visible. I used the little polishing bit on the end of a Dremel. This one's half gone though. And these ones are all pretty much gone. I have a feeling this will not work. But who knows, just for grins, let's pop it in and see if this can work. No. Pull it out slightly. Nope. Push it in more. Nope. And I put it in the cartridge slot without the case. I did get it to show a green kind of screen, which is typical of that startup screen. Oh, there it is. If I push down on it, it makes contact. All right, I've given up. I can't get this to work at all anymore. I think one of the issues is one of the main traces, I think it's like the 5 volts probably, it's almost gone entirely. The rest of the traces are actually in okay shape, but the fact that the 5 volt one is gone means that it's kind of unlikely this is really getting powered up properly. I mean, the weird thing about this cartridge is Space Armada stickers, fine. So it's just like whatever happened to this. So maybe this was somehow, well, I don't really know. I've never seen something so corroded with so much blue crusties, and it was all over the edge connector as well, without having like obvious signs, you know, on the outside of the cartridge that something bad had happened. All right, so that means that Space Armada is out, and now we're stuck with Major League Baseball. I have a feeling I'm not gonna play this for very long, so I'm not even gonna bother with the overlay. Look at that, comes right up though, no issues. Now I assume if you're a baseball fan, this is a huge improvement over anything that the Atari 2600 would have had. Oh, wait a second. This must be a 2-player game. So I think the visitor is up to bat. So let's grab the other controller. It looks like this controller is for the home team, the blue players, and this one is for the red team, the visitors. So let's see if I can do 2-player here. Okay, so at least I swung the bat. I got a strike. And now I have to throw back to the pitcher, which is like this. I'm sure I did that wrong. Okay. All right, home run. Look at that. I managed to get, I guess, to get a point. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Visitors won. All right, well, there we have it. That is the Intellivision Intelligent Television game console from 1979. Well, this one's from 1982, but it is fixed. It is now working. Thank you very much, Mark Thompson, for giving this console to me and these games. I am kind of bummed out about Space Armada, but people can let me know in the comments section if that is actually a good version of Space Invaders. And really, Donkey Kong was the biggest disappointment with all the games on this console, because that seems pretty lame. And this was 1982, so it was like 3 years after this thing came out. I figure they could have done a better job. Now, as far as the rest of the games that we tried, like the Major League Baseball game, that's just ho-hum. That baseball games are not for me. I did play Hardball on my Apple II GS quite a bit, and I did like that. but I don't think I would have found any baseball game particularly fun. Space Armada maybe would have been fun if that actually worked. Triple Action I found quite lame. Please let me know in the comment section if you played this game and you liked it back in the day, but I think the tank game is really the only one probably worth playing, and maybe the biplane one is okay as well. Oh, I realize you can shoot with the biplanes, and maybe you're supposed to shoot that balloon. Is that the whole point? Maybe. Locomotion, that seemed kind of fun with the trains and the puzzle and stuff. That I could see getting hooked with that back in the day if I were playing that a lot. And Night Stalker, that seemed like a pretty good game as well. I thought that was relatively fun, and kind of once you got the hang of it, yeah, not a bad little Berserk slash, all these games were kind of similar back in the day. There wasn't a lot of original thought. Although Locomotion, that seemed pretty original. I don't know if this was on other consoles, but yeah, I really kind of like that. And then the other game that was left was Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, which I'm not a D&D player. I never really was. So I couldn't tell you if this game is even decent in any way. Although, look, it had scrolling. It's the only game here that we saw that had scrolling. And that's because even though this thing has tile-based graphics, it just does not have a movable viewport. So the CPU has to move those tiles around, and you can only do that apparently during the V-blank or something like that. So you have a very limited time, and because this thing really is running so slow, even though we saw the clock speed is like 1.79, I think it's like half that, like what the CPU effectively runs at, even though the clocks going into it were, almost 2 megahertz. Anyhow, in the end, I'm glad that the solution to get this thing working was relatively simple, just that bad transistor, which I was able to find and identify. I did have to take quite a bit of time to kind of go through the architecture, through the service manual, but I'm really glad I had that, because frankly, if I didn't, it would have been a little bit difficult. I think I would have got there in the end because I would have known to check voltages and then clocks, and maybe the data sheet for the CPU would have at least shown the 2 clock signals that it should have been getting, 12 volts, and obviously one of them looked completely wrong. And it wasn't so hard on the backside just to kind of reverse engineer that clock driver circuit with those 2 transistors and all that stuff. Not to mention, early on when I took this thing apart, remember the board was kind of discolored in that one spot? Kind of indicates there's a problem. Anytime you see that, you either have bad solder joints there, you might have a burned up component, especially if it's not working. It can sometimes be like that, that's normal just because it gets really hot and if the thing runs for a long time. But ultimately, that's always a good clue. If you see that on like a CRT monitor or on a computer, a burned section of the board or discolored, you should go there first. So there we have it. If you enjoyed this video, thumbs up. I'd love to hear comments about your thoughts on the Intellivision, especially if you had one of these back in the day. I'm glad to have one of these in the collection. I'm not a big game collector because of course I have a Mister, so I can play all of these games on there. I don't really need to have the console, but it's kind of cool to have this old 70s wood grain thing. And thanks to my supporters, and thanks to subscribes, and I don't know, all the usual YouTube stuff. And that's gonna be that. So stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.